"Make me your wife just for tonight," the Apache woman said, and what happened next changed everything. The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. A lone man was walking along a dusty trail, tired, hungry, and very far from home. He had been traveling for days, trying to escape a life that felt heavy and dangerous. Every step he took was slow because his legs were sore, and his clothes were torn from the rough journey. The wind blew across the open land, carrying a hint of cold that made him shiver. He was worried because he had no idea where he could find food, water, or shelter. Darkness was coming, and he knew he had to find a safe place before night fell completely. As he stumbled over a rock, he saw smoke rising in the distance. At first, he thought it was just the light of the setting sun, but then he realized it came from a small campfire. He decided to approach carefully, keeping quiet so as not to scare anyone. The closer he got, the more he saw the outlines of small tents and people moving near the fire. It looked like a small village, and from a distance, it seemed peaceful. The man's heart beat faster. He was not sure if he was welcome here, but the thought of a warm place to rest, food to eat, and water to drink gave him hope he had not felt for days. As he stepped closer, a woman appeared from one of the tents. She was tall, with long black hair, strong but gentle features, and eyes that seemed to look straight into his soul. She was dressed in traditional Apache clothing, her movements calm and confident. The man stopped, unsure of what to say. She looked at him with curiosity, but there was no fear in her eyes. Instead, there was a sense of understanding, as if she could see how tired and lost he was. Without saying a word, she motioned for him to follow her. He felt nervous but had no other choice. He followed her to a small tent, where a warm fire was already burning. The inside smelled of herbs and wood smoke, and it felt safe in a way he had not felt for a long time. She gestured for him to sit, and he sank onto a soft blanket. She gave him water in a small clay cup, and he drank slowly, feeling the cool liquid revive him. Then she offered him some food, a simple meal of roasted corn, beans, and a piece of bread made from grains he had never seen before. The man ate slowly, savoring every bite, realizing how hungry he had been. While he ate, he tried to speak, but his words came out awkwardly. "Thank you," he finally said, his voice trembling. The woman only nodded, smiling slightly. Her smile was kind but serious, and it made him feel both welcome and uneasy at the same time. After he ate, she asked him where he had come from. He hesitated, not sure if he should tell her the truth. His life had been difficult, and he did not want to seem weak. But her eyes were patient, and he felt he could trust her. Slowly, he explained that he had been traveling alone, escaping danger and searching for a place where he could feel safe again. He told her about the storms he had endured, the long walks through barren lands, and the nights he had spent with no shelter. As he spoke, he realized that he had never shared his fears with anyone before. Talking to her made him feel lighter, as if some of the burden he had been carrying was finally being released. The woman listened quietly, nodding occasionally. Then she spoke, and her voice was calm but firm. "You need to rest tonight. Tomorrow you can decide what to do. But tonight you are safe here." The man felt a warmth in his chest. He had not felt safety in a long time, and her words reassured him more than anything else could. He wanted to ask her why she was helping him, why she cared, but he stayed silent. Somehow he knew that words were not necessary. Her actions spoke louder than anything she could say. As the night grew darker, the wind outside became colder, and the man shivered again. He looked around the tent and realized that he was not alone in this world anymore, even if only for a short while. Then, unexpectedly, the woman said something that made him stop breathing for a moment. "Make me your wife just for tonight," she said. The words sounded strange, almost impossible. He blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. The tent felt smaller suddenly, and his mind raced with questions. Why would she say such a thing? Did it mean what he thought it meant? Was it a test, a joke, or something serious? He did not know how to respond. She saw his hesitation and smiled softly. "Do not be afraid," she said. "It is only for tonight. It is a promise that protects me, and it will not harm you. You will not lose anything, but I will gain safety." That is all. The man felt a mix of confusion and curiosity. He wanted to ask more questions, but he realized that she was serious. There was no trick in her eyes, no hidden meaning. She was offering trust and asking for trust in return. He slowly nodded, understanding that she was not asking for love or affection, only a promise that had meaning in her world. The night grew deeper, and the fire in the tent cast soft shadows across the walls. They sat together, not touching but close enough to feel each other's presence. The man realized that there was something sacred in this moment. The woman's request was not about desire, it was about respect, tradition, and survival. As he thought about the journey that had brought him here, he felt a strange connection to her, as if their paths had crossed for a reason he could not yet understand. He felt grateful for her courage, for her honesty, and for the quiet way she had welcomed him into her world. Hours passed and the storm outside raged on. The man felt the tension of his journey slowly leave him. His body relaxed and his mind became calm. The woman tended the fire, occasionally looking at him to make sure he was comfortable. They did not speak much, but their silence was peaceful. It was the first night in a long time that the man had felt hope. He realized that even in the most unexpected moments, kindness and trust could appear. And in that quiet night, he also realized that life could change in ways he had never imagined. As midnight approached, the man felt a strange sense of responsibility. Even though the promise was only for one night, he understood that it was meaningful. He could see the strength it took for her to ask such a thing, and he felt honor in being the one she trusted. He wondered what the next day would bring, but he decided not to worry. For now, it was enough to be safe, to rest, and to share the night in quiet understanding. Outside, the storm howled, but inside the tent, there was warmth, safety, and the beginning of an unexpected bond that neither of them could have planned. The night continued slowly, with soft sounds of the wind, the crackle of the fire, and the quiet breathing of two people from very different worlds brought together by fate. The man realized that sometimes the smallest decisions, like stopping to trust a stranger, could change everything. And he knew, deep in his heart, that tonight would not be like any other night he had ever lived. It was the night when paths crossed, when understanding bridged distance, and when two lives began a story that would change them forever. The next morning, the man woke up to the gentle light of the rising sun. The fire in the tent had burned low, and the woman was already awake, moving quietly to prepare a simple breakfast. The man stretched and felt the stiffness in his legs from the long walk the day before. He realized that last night, for the first time in many days, he had actually slept peacefully. There had been no fear, no hunger pangs, no thoughts of danger, only calm, only safety, and he knew he had the woman to thank for it. He watched her from where he sat, noticing the way her hands worked skillfully with the food. She was making bread from the leftover grains, grinding them finely and mixing them with water. She hummed softly while working, and the sound was calming. The man felt a sense of awe. Even in simple tasks, she carried herself with strength, precision, and dignity. It reminded him that she had survived a hard life and that she was capable of doing things most people could not imagine. He wanted to say something to thank her properly, but words felt inadequate. He simply nodded at her and smiled, and she returned the gesture with quiet warmth. When breakfast was ready, they ate together. The food was simple, but it tasted better than anything he had eaten in days. The woman shared stories about the land around them, about the river nearby, the hills that marked their territory, and the animals that roamed freely. She explained which plants could heal and which could harm. The man listened carefully, fascinated by her knowledge. He realized that she had learned these things not from books but from life itself, from observing, practicing, and surviving. He felt a deep respect for her and for the people who had taught her these lessons. After breakfast, the woman spoke again, her voice calm but serious. "Last night you promised to make me your wife, even if only for one night," she said. "Do you understand why I asked?" The man nodded slowly. "I think I do," he replied. "You wanted protection, safety, and honor." The woman's eyes softened. "Yes, there are rules in my world. A woman alone can face dangers that a man may not even know exist. By asking this promise, I was asking for protection without asking for anything I cannot give. It is not about love. It is about survival and respect." The man thought about her words. He had never considered that survival could come with such a request, such a responsibility. In his world, things were different. People rarely asked for help, and trust was hard to come by. Yet here was someone asking for both and trusting him to answer with honesty. He felt the weight of it, the importance of the promise he had made. And he realized that last night had already changed him. He did not know how or why, but something inside him had shifted. He felt braver, more alive, and more aware of the world around him. As the morning turned into afternoon, the woman took him outside to see the village. Children played nearby, laughing and chasing each other, while elders sat quietly, weaving baskets or carving wood. The man observed the simple beauty of their lives, the way people worked together, the respect they showed one another, the care with which they treated the land. It was very different from the towns he had known. Here, life was hard but honest, and every action had meaning. The man felt a strange sense of belonging, even though he had only just arrived. The woman introduced him to some of the villagers. At first, they were cautious, but when they saw how he had helped the woman last night, they began to accept him. They asked questions about his journey, his life, and his intentions. The man answered as honestly as he could, and slowly he felt a connection forming. He realized that trust and respect were universal. They crossed cultures, languages, and traditions. And he understood that this village, which had seemed so remote and strange, was a place of strength, wisdom, and community unlike anything he had known before. Later in the day, the woman took him to a nearby stream. The water was clear and cold, and she showed him how to wash, how to catch fish, and how to gather safe plants along the bank. The man was clumsy at first, unfamiliar with the techniques, but she guided him patiently. Every mistake he made, she corrected kindly, never scolding, only teaching. The man began to see how deeply her culture valued learning, respect, and care for others. It was not just survival, it was a way of life, a philosophy that shaped every action. And he felt honored to be included, even temporarily, in this world he had never imagined. As evening approached, the two of them returned to the tent. The man felt tired but different from yesterday. He was no longer only thinking about his own survival, he was thinking about hers too. He realized that protecting someone, helping them feel safe, was a responsibility he had never experienced before. And strangely, he liked the feeling. It was not fear or obligation. It was something deeper, something that made him feel important, capable, and human. The woman noticed the change in him. "You are different now," she said quietly. "You are seeing the world through eyes you did not have before. Last night was not just a promise for me, it was a moment for both of us to understand what trust means." The man nodded. "I understand now," he said. "It is more than words. It is action, respect, and care. I want to do right by this promise, not just for you, but because it feels right." The woman smiled softly, as if she had known he would say this. And in that moment, the man felt a connection that went beyond the promise, beyond culture, beyond words. He felt a bond that was built on understanding and shared humanity. Night came again, and the man was asked to stay near the woman's side. Not as a husband in the sense of love, but as a protector, a witness, and a companion. They sat near the fire, talking softly about the things that mattered to them, the hardships they had faced, the fears they carried, and the hopes they still held. The man realized that he had never had anyone listen to him like this before, not really. And he also realized that listening to her, understanding her, made him feel alive in a way he had never felt. During the quiet hours, the woman spoke about her family, about the ancestors who had taught her the ways of her people, and about the rules that shaped her life. She told stories of courage, hardship, and survival. The man listened, fascinated. He realized that life was not just about surviving physically, but also about surviving emotionally and spiritually. The woman had survived in ways he had never imagined, and her strength inspired him. He began to understand that promises, trust, and respect were more powerful than wealth, power, or status. As the night grew deeper, he felt a sense of responsibility that he had never known before. The promise he had made was small in words but immense in meaning. It required him to see beyond himself, to care for someone else, to act with honor. And he realized that this was what made him feel stronger, braver, and more alive. The woman had asked for a temporary bond, but the lessons of that bond were lasting. He felt that he was becoming a better man simply by being part of her world, even if only for a short time. By the end of the night, he was no longer just a tired traveler. He was someone who had learned the value of trust, respect, and courage. He had seen the power of kindness, the importance of listening, and the strength that came from shared humanity. And he knew that what had begun as a single promise, a simple request to be her husband for one night, had grown into something much more significant. It was not about marriage, love, or possession. It was about understanding, protection, and the beginning of a bond that neither of them had expected, but both of them had accepted. The morning light returned, and the man knew that he had changed. He looked at the woman, and she looked at him, both of them silently acknowledging that last night and today had set something in motion that could not be undone. They did not speak of love or future plans, but they did speak of trust, understanding, and respect. And as he prepared for whatever would come next, he felt ready. He was ready to face the world, to face danger, and to face life itself, with new strength, new courage, and a new understanding of what it meant to truly protect and care for another human being. The days that followed were filled with quiet learning and shared moments. The man began to understand the rhythm of life in the village. Each morning, he woke to the sound of birds and the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. The woman, always calm and patient, guided him through the routines of her people. He learned how to gather food from the land, how to start a fire without modern tools, and how to move quietly to avoid disturbing the animals around them. Every task, no matter how small, carried purpose. He marveled at her knowledge and skill, realizing that survival was not just about strength, but about wisdom, patience, and respect for the world around them. At first, the man struggled to keep up. His hands were clumsy when gathering herbs, and he often tripped over roots while walking through the forest. But the woman never scolded him. She corrected him gently, showing him again and again how to do things properly. "It is not a race," she told him one morning as he fumbled with a small bundle of plants. "Life moves slowly, and you must learn to move with it." Her voice was calm but full of authority. The man listened carefully, realizing that every word she said carried more than just instruction. It carried experience, patience, and care. One afternoon, as the sun began to lower in the sky, the woman led him to a quiet spot near a river. The water flowed gently, reflecting the light like a ribbon of silver. She asked him to sit and watch for a moment. "Look," she said, "the river teaches patience. It does not rush, but it moves. It overcomes obstacles slowly, persistently. Life is like this river." The man looked at the water, thinking about his own journey. He had been rushing through life, trying to escape, trying to survive, but he had never stopped to understand or observe. Now, with her guidance, he saw a new way of thinking, one that embraced patience, observation, and respect for the flow of life. As days passed, the bond between them grew. It was not a love born of romance, but of understanding and shared experience. They laughed together when mistakes were made, shared quiet moments of reflection, and helped each other with tasks that were difficult or dangerous. The man began to feel a sense of responsibility he had never known before. It was not just about keeping himself alive. It was about ensuring the woman's safety, helping her with her tasks, and honoring the promise he had made. Each small act of care, each shared task, strengthened their connection and built a trust that neither of them had expected. One evening, as the sky turned shades of pink and gold, a distant sound caught their attention. It was the howl of wolves from far away, followed by the rumble of thunder. The man felt a familiar fear rising inside him, but the woman remained calm. She explained that these sounds were a part of life in the wilderness. Danger existed, yes, but with knowledge and preparation, it could be managed. She showed him how to listen, how to read the signs of the land, and how to respond without panic. The man followed her instructions carefully, feeling a growing confidence in his ability to survive. He realized that strength was not just physical, it was mental, emotional, and spiritual as well. That night, as they sat near the fire in the woman's tent, she spoke about her life before the village. She told him about the challenges she had faced, family lost, hardships endured, and the long journey to find safety and community. Her stories were filled with sorrow, but also courage and resilience. The man listened, captivated by her strength. He realized that every hardship she had faced had shaped her into the person she was today, brave, wise, and compassionate. And he felt honored to be part of her life, even temporarily, to witness her story and learn from it. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from outside the village. The man jumped, startled. The woman immediately stood, her eyes sharp and alert. "Stay here," she instructed, moving toward the entrance of the village. From their tent, the man could see shadows moving quickly, figures approaching. It was clear that someone or something had entered the village uninvited. Fear gripped him, but he knew he could not flee. He had promised to protect her, and he intended to keep that promise. Gathering his courage, he followed her outside, keeping close but careful. As they stepped into the open, the man saw a group of strangers at the edge of the village. They were rough-looking men, clearly not from the village, and their intentions seemed threatening. The woman approached calmly, speaking in her native language. The man could not understand the words, but he saw the authority and confidence in her gestures. He realized that she was not afraid, and her bravery gave him courage. Together, they faced the strangers. When words did not work, the woman showed them the strength of her people. The man joined her, standing firm, and realized that the bond they shared was now being tested in real danger. The confrontation did not last long. The strangers eventually left, realizing that the villagers were united and strong. The man felt relief flood through him. He looked at the woman, noticing the quiet determination in her eyes, the calm bravery that had guided them both. He realized that last night's promise had been more than symbolic. It had prepared him to act, to face fear, and to understand the responsibilities of trust. He felt a deep respect for her, stronger than anything he had felt before. After the danger had passed, the woman led him back to the tent. They sat quietly, catching their breath and reflecting on what had happened. "You did well today," she said softly. "You acted with courage and care. That is the meaning of trust. It is not just words, it is action when it matters most." The man nodded, feeling the weight and importance of her words. He understood now that promises were not just made to be spoken, they were made to be lived, especially in moments of challenge. He felt proud, but also humbled by the experience. The days continued with a mixture of learning, work, and reflection. The man discovered more about the land, the traditions, and the community around him. Each task he completed, each challenge he faced brought him closer to understanding the woman and her world. They continued to share quiet moments near the fire, talking about life, survival, and the choices they had made. The man realized that he had grown in ways he could never have imagined. He had learned patience, responsibility, courage, and respect. And he knew that these lessons would stay with him for the rest of his life. One afternoon, the woman asked him to help with a special task. They were to build a small shelter near the edge of the village, a place for emergencies or for travelers who might arrive unexpectedly. Together, they carried wood, tied materials, and worked in careful coordination. The man felt a sense of pride as the shelter began to take shape. He noticed how naturally the woman led, how she balanced patience and authority, and how she encouraged him to do his best. The work was hard, but it was also rewarding. By the time the shelter was finished, they stood back and admired their effort, feeling a shared sense of accomplishment. That evening, as the fire flickered and the stars appeared in the sky, the woman spoke softly. "Last night was only the beginning," she said. "The promise you made, it matters because it showed your character. You did not have to stay, but you chose to be present. You did not have to act with courage, but you did. That is the meaning of honor." The man felt tears in his eyes. He realized that the bond they shared had grown stronger, not from love, but from respect, trust, and shared experience. He understood now that promises, actions, and care were the true foundations of connection. By the time he went to sleep that night, the man felt transformed. He was no longer the lost traveler who had stumbled into the village days ago. He was someone who had learned, grown, and shared in the life of another human being. The woman had shown him that survival was not just about physical endurance. It was about courage, patience, understanding, and trust. And he knew that the events of the past few days, the promise he had made, and the bond they had formed, had changed him forever. The morning sun rose slowly over the village, casting long golden rays across the hills and tents. The air was fresh, carrying the faint scent of earth and grass. The man awoke feeling a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. Last night's events had changed everything between him and the woman. Their bond, formed through trust, courage, and shared experience, was now stronger than ever. But as he stretched and rubbed the sleep from his eyes, he knew that the world outside the safety of the tent might now demand something more from him. The woman was already awake, tending the small fire in the corner of the tent. She looked calm as always, but there was a seriousness in her eyes that the man had not seen before. She spoke softly, "Today is different. Today, your actions will matter even more. You are part of this village now, even if only for a short time, and what happens next will test the promise you made." The man listened carefully. He had no idea what she meant, but he trusted her judgment. Every step he had taken with her so far had shown him that she was wise, brave, and deeply thoughtful. As they stepped outside, the village seemed alive with energy. Children were running between tents, elders were preparing food, and villagers were beginning their daily work. But something felt different. Whispers floated through the air, and several villagers glanced toward the man as he walked beside the woman. He felt a small wave of anxiety. He had not fully understood the customs of the village, and now it seemed that his presence was significant in ways he did not yet realize. The woman walked with confidence, as if she knew exactly how to navigate the situation. She gestured for him to follow, and he did so, trusting her guidance. Soon, they reached the center of the village, where elders had gathered. The man felt a nervous flutter in his chest. He realized that his actions during the previous night, the courage he had shown, the support he had given the woman, were being observed and acknowledged. The elders spoke among themselves in quiet tones, and then one of them turned to him, speaking in the woman's language. The man did not understand the words fully, but the tone was serious yet respectful. The woman translated, "They recognize the promise you made. In our tradition, that promise is not temporary. It carries meaning, respect, and responsibility. The choice you make today will shape what comes next. The man's mind raced. He had thought the promise was only for one night, a simple agreement to protect her. But now he understood that it was far more significant. In the woman's world, a promise was sacred. Words alone were not enough. Actions, commitment, and honor gave them power. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He could not walk away without consequences, not just for him but for the woman as well. She had entrusted him with her safety, her honor, and her trust, and now the village expected him to honor that promise fully. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his thoughts. The woman stood beside him quietly, offering a calm presence. Her eyes conveyed understanding and reassurance. "You must decide," she said softly. "It is your choice, but remember that promises carry meaning beyond words. Think carefully and follow what is right." The man nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. He realized that this moment was more than a decision. It was a test of character, courage, and integrity. He looked around the village, observing the people he had come to respect. He saw the children playing, the elders working, and the families caring for one another. He realized that he had been given a chance to be part of something larger than himself, something meaningful, something rooted in tradition and trust. He thought about the promise he had made, the night they had shared, and the bond that had grown between him and the woman. His heart told him that he could not abandon this responsibility. He had to honor what he had begun, no matter how challenging it might be. Finally, he spoke. "I will stay," he said, his voice steady. "I will honor the promise I made, not just for last night but for what it truly means. I will do what is right for you, for your people, and for the trust you have placed in me." The woman smiled, a mixture of relief and respect in her expression. The elders nodded, acknowledging his choice. The man felt a sense of calm wash over him. He knew that he had made the right decision, and that his actions from this moment onward would define him in ways he had never imagined. The woman led him to a small area near her home, explaining the responsibilities he would now share. He was to help with daily tasks, assist in protecting the village, and participate in ceremonies that honored the traditions of her people. At first, the tasks seemed simple, gathering food, helping build structures, carrying water, but each one carried deeper meaning. The woman taught him how every action, no matter how small, contributed to the strength and survival of the community. The man listened carefully, absorbing each lesson, realizing that this life required patience, respect, and thoughtfulness at every step. Days passed, and the man settled into his new responsibilities. He worked alongside the woman and the villagers, learning quickly and adapting to the routines of their lives. He discovered a sense of purpose he had never known before. Each task he completed, each challenge he overcame, strengthened his bond with the woman and the village. He realized that his life had been limited by fear, isolation, and doubt, but now he was part of something bigger, a community built on trust, honor, and shared responsibility. One morning, while helping the woman gather food near the forest edge, they encountered a wild animal. It was a deer, cautious but graceful, drinking from a small stream. The man froze, unsure how to act. The woman gently guided him, showing him how to observe without disturbing, how to respect life even in the midst of survival. "Everything has a place," she explained. "Life is a balance. You take only what is needed, and you give respect in return." The man nodded, understanding that survival was not just about taking. It was about observing, learning, and respecting the world around him. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between the man and the woman grew stronger. They shared more than work. They shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. The man learned about her past, the struggles she had faced, and the dreams she still held. She learned about his life, his fears, and the hopes that had driven him to travel so far. Though their worlds were different, they found common ground in trust, courage, and shared humanity. Then, one evening, a message arrived from a neighboring village. There had been trouble nearby, and the woman's village might be affected. The elders gathered to discuss the situation, and the man realized that he was expected to act, to help protect the people he had come to care about. Fear rose in his chest, but he remembered the lessons he had learned: courage, patience, trust, and honor. He would not turn away. The woman stood by him, offering quiet support. Together, they prepared to face whatever challenge lay ahead. That night, as the fire flickered and the stars appeared, the man reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had arrived as a weary traveler, seeking safety and rest. He had been given a promise, a responsibility, and a bond that he had not fully understood. But now he saw the deeper meaning. The promise was not just for the woman, it was for himself, for the community, and for the life he had yet to build. He understood that actions mattered more than words, that courage was born in moments of challenge, and that trust was the foundation of all meaningful connection. By dawn, the man was ready. He stood beside the woman and the villagers, prepared to face the challenges ahead. He knew that his decision to stay, to honor the promise, had changed everything. He was no longer a stranger. He was a protector, a friend, and a part of a community that had welcomed him with trust and respect. And he knew that the journey was far from over, but he was no longer afraid. He had learned the true meaning of responsibility, honor, and courage, and he would carry these lessons for the rest of his life. The morning sun rose over the village, casting a warm, golden glow across the land. The man woke with a deep sense of purpose. He had made the decision to stay, to honor the promise he had made, and now he could feel the weight of that choice in every part of his body and mind. The promise had begun as something temporary, something that was meant only for a single night, but now it had grown into something far greater. It had become a commitment to protect, to care, and to respect, not just the woman but the entire community that had accepted him. The woman was already awake, preparing food near the fire. She moved gracefully with a quiet strength that the man had come to admire deeply. She looked at him and smiled, a smile that held warmth, respect, and a hint of pride. It was a smile that reminded him why he had stayed. Last night and the nights before had taught him courage, patience, and understanding. Today, he would face the next chapter of his journey, not alone, but as part of a bond that had been forged through trust and shared experience. The elders called the man to the center of the village. He walked alongside the woman, feeling a mixture of nervousness and resolve. The villagers gathered around, watching silently, as if they were witnessing an important moment. The elders spoke in their language and the woman translated. The man has chosen to stay. He honors the promise he made. From this day forward, he is part of this community, and the bond between him and the woman is recognized. The man felt a deep sense of responsibility settle over him. He realized that the promise was no longer temporary. It was a part of his life, a guiding principle that would shape his actions from this day forward. The man was given tasks that symbolized his new role. He helped repair homes, gather water, and tend to the animals. He participated in ceremonies that honored the ancestors and the land, learning the traditions that had been passed down for generations. Each task, each ceremony, deepened his understanding of the woman's culture and the values that guided her people. He began to see the world through a different lens, one that valued patience, respect, and connection above all else. He felt himself growing, not just as a person, but as a member of this community. Throughout the days, the bond between the man and the woman continued to grow. They shared meals, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. The man learned more about her life, the hardships she had faced, the losses she had endured, and the courage that had brought her to this village. He realized that her strength was not just physical, but emotional and spiritual. She had survived challenges that would have broken many people, and yet she remained kind, wise, and resilient. The man felt a deep admiration for her, and he knew that he would do everything in his power to honor the trust she had placed in him. One afternoon, while walking along a forest path to gather herbs, the woman stopped suddenly. She pointed to a small clearing where a group of travelers had arrived. They looked weary and frightened, and the man could see that they were in need of help. The woman turned to him and said, "This is why your promise matters. You are here to protect, to assist, and to care. Your actions can change the lives of others just as this community has changed yours." The man nodded, understanding the significance of her words. He approached the travelers with calm confidence, offering food, water, and guidance. He realized that the lessons he had learned, from patience to courage to respect, were not just for him, but for everyone he could help. The travelers stayed for a short while, and during that time, the man worked closely with the woman to provide for their needs. He learned how to balance care for others with the responsibilities of daily life. He saw the power of community, the strength that came from shared effort, and the importance of protecting those who could not protect themselves. Each action he took reinforced the bond he shared with the woman, and he felt a deep sense of fulfillment he had never known before. He realized that the promise he had made, simple as it had seemed at first, had grown into a purpose that guided every step he took. As weeks turned into months, the man and the woman faced challenges together. Sometimes it was harsh weather, sometimes illness, and sometimes disputes with neighboring villages. Each time they relied on the lessons they had learned together: trust, patience, courage, and respect. The man found that he could anticipate her actions, support her decisions, and act in ways that strengthened their bond and the well-being of the village. He had become not just a visitor, but an integral part of this community, and the woman's respect for him deepened as she saw his commitment and growth. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the woman and the man sat together near a quiet stream. They watched the water flow, reflecting the colors of the sky. The man spoke softly, "I never imagined my journey would lead me here. Last night, the night of the promise, I thought it was only for one night, but now I understand it was the beginning of everything. It taught me courage, patience, trust, and respect, and it led me to this life, to this community, and to you." The woman looked at him with a soft smile, her eyes reflecting the depth of her own feelings. "Promises are powerful," she said. "They are not about what is easy, but about what is right. You have honored your promise, and in doing so, you have grown. You have become a part of this life, and this life has become a part of you." The man felt a sense of peace that he had never known. He realized that the promise, once simple and temporary, had become a foundation for his life. It had taught him that actions mattered more than words, that courage was tested in moments of challenge, and that trust was the most precious gift one could give or receive. He looked at the woman and the village, and he knew that he was no longer a traveler or a stranger. He was a protector, a participant, and a friend. Time passed, and the man became fully integrated into the village. He helped teach newcomers the lessons he had learned, guided travelers as he had once been guided, and continued to support the woman in her daily tasks. Their bond remained strong, built on trust, shared experience, and mutual respect. The man had learned that love, in its truest form, could be expressed through actions, commitment, and care, even without words. The promise that had begun as a single night had blossomed into a life filled with purpose, connection, and understanding. One day, as the man and the woman worked together to repair a small bridge near the river, the elders approached them. They spoke of a festival that would honor the ancestors and celebrate the bonds of the community. The man realized that he would be recognized as a full member of the village, not just because of his promise, but because of the actions he had taken and the life he had chosen to lead. The ceremony was a moment of pride, reflection, and joy. It was a celebration of trust, courage, and commitment, the very values that had brought him to this place and taught him the meaning of true connection. That night, under the light of 1,000 stars, the man reflected on the journey that had begun with a single promise. He thought about the long walk that had brought him to the village, the storm that had pushed him into the woman's care, and the courage it had taken to honor a promise he had barely understood. He realized that life was full of unexpected moments, and that the choices made in those moments could change everything. The promise that had begun as a simple request had transformed his life completely. The woman joined him by the fire, sitting quietly as they watched the flames dance. She did not speak, but her presence was comforting and grounding. The man knew that this was a bond that would last a lifetime, not because of tradition alone, but because of the respect, care, and understanding they had built together. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the woman, the village, and the lessons he had learned. He knew that he had become a better person, not just through survival, but through trust, courage, and shared humanity. As the fire burned low and the night grew still, the man made a silent vow. He would continue to honor the promise, not because it was required, but because it was the right thing to do. He would protect, support, and care for the woman and the village for as long as he lived. He understood that true strength came not from solitude, but from connection, commitment, and the courage to act in the service of others. The promise that had begun as a single night had changed everything, and he knew it would continue to shape his life in ways he could never have imagined. In the quiet of the night, the man finally felt complete. He had found purpose, trust, and belonging. He had discovered the power of promises and the strength that comes from honoring them. And as he looked at the woman, sitting calmly beside him, he realized that what had begun as a simple request for safety and protection had transformed into a lifelong bond built on courage, respect, and shared humanity. The man understood at last that life's greatest changes often began with a single, unexpected moment, and that a promise kept with honor could truly change everything.